Hello, this is the Angry DM. Hey guys, here I am once again, in front of the screen, behind the screen. No, not a screen. I'm totally unscreened. There is no screen. So, you know what? If I start doing these regular vlogs, then, hey, I could call it Angry Unscreened, and then I can get a title card and a theme song and learn how to insert stuff into the video, because technically I kind of suck at this stuff, which is why I'm just sitting here staring at a webcam talking. So, the last time we saw each other was my unboxing video of the D&D starter set, and gosh, didn't we have fun with that, except for all the people who didn't get it and decided to tell me that I had maybe missed the essential spirit of what an unboxing video was supposed to be, and, you know, yeah, thanks a lot, guys. You know what? You don't have to live like this, okay? I understand there is no cure for humor impairment, but there are treatments available. Ask your doctor. Seriously. Okay. So, the reason I'm here is because I apparently made some controversial statements on Twitter about the challenge rating and encounter building rules in D&D 5e, and have come to realize that a lot of people are very confused about how to put together encounters in 5e. So I'm going to go ahead and try to help clear that up, and in so doing, I'm going to be talking about two things. Numero one, this, which is the D&D 5e Monster Manual, which came out at Premier Stores on Friday, so you might want to check with your store if you don't have your copy yet, because you might be able to get it as, like, right now. Otherwise, it's going to come out, I think September 30th is the official release date for the non-Premier stores. And you know what? Let me give a quick review. This is a beautiful book. It really is, okay? As monster manuals go, it is one of the best ones I have seen. I know on Twitter, I've been making a lot of fun of the individual monsters, which, you know, it's what I do. I nitpick, I critique, and, you know, we all have a good laugh about that, except the people who don't get it, and then they send me private messages saying that I don't understand what I'm talking about. But anyway, it's a beautiful book. I'm just gonna, you know, open to a random page and hold it up. So, with each monster, you get some really nice artwork. Maybe I'll show, let's see. Because I've been posting some pictures of it, but yeah, there's the artwork. I'm not even sure what page I'm on. But for each monster, you get the artwork itself, which is really nicely done. I mean, I don't agree with the look of some of the monsters, but you know, that doesn't matter. The artwork itself is objectively really nice artwork. And one of the nicest things about it is it's all, even though there were a lot of artists in the credits here, the artwork all looks very similar. It all looks like it was done by the same person. It was done for the same book, which is nice. Every so often you get stuff where, you know, there's very different styles of creature. Everything has kind of this really muscular style, which I don't quite like so much. But again, the artwork is beautiful. Then you get a stat block. Whoop. You get a stat block, which is intuitive, fairly easy to read. You know, it's a stat block. It does what it's supposed to do. And then, peeking to see if you can see it, every monster has this write-up. And the write-up is where the monster manual really shines here. Because what they did for the write-up of each monster, they give a brief physical description of each monster, so they don't rely on just the artwork to sell it. But in addition, every monster has a couple of paragraphs of that talk about different lore things about the monster. And the thing that's neat about it is you don't just get the same lore for each monster. They sort of sat down with each monster and they seem to have figured out, what are the big hooks? What are the draws? What are the story things that are neat about this monster? And then those are the things they emphasize. So, you know, hobgoblins, they talk about their society and their tactics and their military, because that's what hobgoblins are. But then you get to, I don't know, I'm just leafing through the book here. Then you get to gnolls, and I guess gnolls Knowles actually talks more about their origin and their bloodlust and stuff like that rather than their society. I mean, there's some stuff on their society in there, but they didn't just say, well, you know, we need to write up the society or the tactics or whatever for every creature. They sat down, they said, what are the things about this creature? And then let's sell them. You know, let's spell those out, which is really neat. It's a really good approach. You know, it means you get just the right amount of useful lore. You don't get a lot of crap you're not going to use. All of it, you can see how it would be useful in the story of the game. Now, some people have actually said that because of the way they're like, you get a bold-faced heading and then a paragraph describing it. Some people have said that this was like Fate aspects, and I just want to address that for a second. No, they're not, you morons. They are not like Fate aspects. Let me explain why. Okay? Fate aspects are not like anything. A Fate aspect is just a short sentence of description. Okay? That's all it is. Technically, the Angry DM, that would be my title, that's a Fate aspect. Because it describes things about me. I'm a dungeon master and I'm angry, and I'm angry about being a dungeon master. And see, it's story hooks. Oh my gosh, it's a Fate aspect. Well, a Fate aspect is just a description. What makes a Fate aspect is the mechanics of Fate. The fact that you can compel a Fate aspect, or that you can invoke a Fate aspect, and it affects the die rolls. That's what makes it a Fate aspect. A sentence of description is just a descriptive sentence. In this case, it's just a friggin' heading, okay? It's not a Fate aspect. This isn't Fate. Stop wishing it was. If you start giving the monsters advantage on any die rolls that key off these bold-faced little headings, then you can call it a Fate aspect. And then when, you know, you can have the PCs invoke or compel them for disadvantage, like, oh, you're fighting the Bullywug, which has unruly diplomacy, and, you know, it's talking in, you know, it's trying to negotiate with us, but it's not being unruly, so you should give it disadvantage on its rolls, or some shit like that. I don't know. You know, but that's the point. Fate aspects are not anything. Aspects are not the mechanic. The mechanic are the things that key off the aspects. The aspect is just a sentence of description. Sorry. Anyway, getting back to the monster manual. I like it a lot. There's a couple of flaws in this book. Number one, a bunch of monsters ended up in this appendix of miscellaneous creatures, which appears to be just creatures that don't deserve a write-up. See, originally I thought it was normal monsters, like crocodiles and deer and giant boars and whatever. But then you have a couple of monsters in here like the Blink Dog, the Axebeak, and Swarm of Quippers, whatever the hell those are. You know, a Phase Spider is back here. And the thing is that the monsters in this appendix, you just get a stat block. You don't get any description. A couple of them have art, but the vast majority of them do not. So if you actually don't know what the creature is, you're SOL. You know, I have not figured out what a Quipper is. Based on its stats, based on the fact that it can only live underwater, and that it goes into a blood frenzy, and that it's a swarm, I'm guessing piranha. But I don't know. You know, and it was... It's almost seemed like they threw in the creatures that they ran out of time to handle back here. I don't know. So I don't like that, but, you know, make of it what you will. The other thing... and I kind of raised a big stink about this on Twitter, because I did feel that it was a huge omission, and I am kind of regretting some of the stink I raised, because I do kind of forget how overwhelming an online rant can be if you are the recipient, and I think it did make me look really monstrous to the guys at Wizards of the Coast. But that said, They did not include an index in the monster manual divided up by challenge rating and XP budget, which is useful for encounter building. Now, it's coming in the DM's guide, but the DM's guide isn't going to be here for another 3 months. So in the meanwhile, there's no way to really search through the monsters when you're building encounters, which is going to become really important in a second. So that was my complaint, and Wizards of the Coast, they did hear the complaints of myself and all the people online who joined in, and they immediately put up online on their website a PDF listing all the monsters by their challenge rating, which was really great of them to do immediately. They really were responsive, and to be quite fair, more than anything else, that's why I feel so guilty about the rant I went on, because it was kind of the middle of the night when I discovered this, and there was really no way that Wizards of the Coast could have noticed the rant at that point and then responded, and I just kind of kept railing on it for a good long time. So, WotC, I want to apologize for that rant. It was way too far. It was way too overwhelming. It stopped being funny, and it was really just abusive, and I do feel tremendously guilty about that. I was actually... I talked to 1 or 2 Wizards employees online after that, and did let them know that I felt guilty, but I want to say it to you guys, I am sorry about that, and also, thank you. This book is awesome, and you outdid yourselves. You did a really good job presenting the monsters. The presentation is great. I mean, a monster manual is a monster manual. It's stat blocks and lore. So all you can really grade it on, other than going through each individual monster and nitpicking it, is the presentation itself, and the variety of monsters. And there's over 350 monsters in here, but you know what? It's got all the monsters that D&D always has, and a few that D&D should never have. Modrons. But, it's a monster manual. It is a beautiful monster manual. It is a great addition to the 5e collection, and I am really enjoying 5e, despite some of the complaints I've voiced. I do think there are some presentation issues in the player's handbook. I'm not going to go back on that, but again, you know what? The game itself is the important part, and the game itself is great. So Monster Manual, run out and get yours. Trust me. Especially if you're going to be building adventures or encounters, you're going to need it. I mean, I kind of joke that you don't need a review of the Monster Manual because you already know if you're buying this Monster Manual. If you're playing the game and you're going to write your own adventures, you need the Monster Manual. Now, let's get to the meat and potatoes of the issue here, because the real reason I'm here behind the camera, that I'm now talking about 12 minutes in, is actually how to build encounters, because there seems to be a lot of confusion, and I fielded a lot of questions, and it's kind of funny that I'm actually like, oh, I'll go produce a video, and you know, I'll talk about it for a half hour or whatever. Hopefully no more than a half hour, I promise. And there's not going to be a punchline at the end of this, okay? This is a serious video. But anyway, so if you want to build encounters, the first thing you're going to have to do is you are going to have to go online and grab yourselves this, okay? Now, obviously, if you download it online, you're not getting a binder, because you can't download a binder, you're just getting a document, a PDF. This is the Dungeon Master's Basic Rules, which is available on the Wizards website. I'll put a link down there in the description, so you can check that out. And it's basically a miniature monster manual, so if you haven't gotten your monster manual, it's there, and it also gives you nearly a dozen whole magic items that you can use, so it's a little underwhelming there, but they've said they're going to add more. Whatever. But the real important part comes on page 56 and 57. Blech, that was tough to say. 56 and 57, where they explain to you how to use the numbers to build combat encounters, because this isn't in the monster manual, okay? So let's talk about how it works, so that hopefully I can make this clear. Okay. First of all, every creature in D&D has a challenge rating and an XP value. Okay? Now, the XP value and the challenge rating are equivalents. So, for example, a level 1 creature will always have an a CR1 creature will always have an XP value of 200 XP. Okay? That's never going to change. A CR7 creature will always have an XP value of 2,900. At least for now. I can't swear that it's not going to change, to be totally honest. But my understanding, the way I'm reading this, that's the way it's going to That's the way it's going to work. Okay? Now, what does the CR mean? Okay? Obviously, the CR is a way of measuring the challenge rating of the monster. That's what it means. But what does that actually mean for encounter building? Well, it means a couple of things. Number one, it gives you a benchmark as to when the party should be facing this creature. So if a creature has a CR of 6, it's really the sort of thing that a 6th level party should encounter, or a party with some 6th level members, but not a 4th level party. Even if you can build an encounter with an XP budget, which we'll get to in a second, with an XP budget that allows you to drop that 6th level creature in there, if the PCs are only 4th level or 5th level, maybe you want to hold off, because that 6th level creature, that 6 CR creature, might be a little bit more powerful than the XP budget alone indicates. Okay? Now, obviously that's going to be fuzzy. So, we're going to have to tease it out and see how well that works. But CR is kind of the level at which that creature should start showing up. Okay? Or thereabouts. The other thing that the CR does is it gives you a good way to estimate whether or not the creature is an appropriate challenge for 4 PCs of that level. So, if you have a CR2 creature... I'm going to open to a random monster here. Okay? Okay, a Githzerai Monk. Githzerai Monk is CR2, which means 1 Githzerai Monk is an appropriate challenge for 4 second-level characters. Okay? It is also worth 450 XP because all CR2 creatures are worth 450 XP. So if that group of 4 second-level PCs beats the Githzerai Monk, they will split up between them 450 XP. You got it? Okay. Now, here's where it gets wonky. Especially because I am a big advocate of building encounters with multiple creatures. The minute you start to vary any of those numbers, either the number of creatures or the number of PCs or the level of the PCs, things get weird. And that's when you have to start going to the building combat encounters rules. Because they really don't... It's very hard to eyeball, and it is very non-intuitive. Alright? So let me give you the basics first of all. And I'm going to suggest, if you haven't done it yet, pause this video, download the document, and open to page 56 and 57 so that you're looking at it while I'm talking. Okay? In fact, maybe I can even figure out how to insert screenshots as I'm editing this. Okay, so take a look at the encounter difficulty XP per character here, because this is where it all starts. What this does is this defines how many XP worth of difficulty a party can handle based on the number of PCs in their level. So, for example, if you have level 1 PCs, then each PC can handle 50 XP worth of difficulty. And there's a reason I'm phrasing it that way. Worth of difficulty. 50 XP worth of difficulty. And call that a medium encounter. A moderately difficult encounter. So if you've got 4 first level PCs, you multiply that 50 times the 4, and you'll see that you can have an encounter of 200 XP. And anything up to 200 XP, you would consider that a moderate difficulty. Okay? Now, that's kind of where that whole CR thing comes from. Because if you look at CR1 creatures are worth 200 XP. So, 4 first level PCs would consider 1 CR1 creature to be an average difficulty. That's why it works out that way. When it's not that way, though, things get really wonky. And they get wonky quickly. For example, okay, let's say instead of one CR1 creature, I have two CR1 creatures. So now again, we're talking each CR1 creature is worth 200 experience points. So you might think, oh, well that's going to be 400 XP worth of difficulty. But not so. There's an important thing to keep in mind, okay? And the logic, let me do the logic first. Okay. When you face two creatures of any difficulty, you can think of the difficulty as coming from the creature's numbers, but that's not really an accurate measure. See, the difficulty of an encounter is not merely based on the output, or, you know, the combat output of the creatures, for whatever you want to define the combat output, you know, the amount of damage they can do, the conditions they can inflict, etc., etc., etc. Okay, the fact that there are two monsters instead of one means that both of those monsters are more powerful than either one would be alone because they have a partner. So suddenly now, the party has to divide its attention between two different creatures. It's not enough to say that those creatures have this output, and now they have twice as much output. They have more than twice as much output because of the way they can work together. Likewise, if you have 5 monsters, well, not only are each of those creatures bringing their own abilities to the table so that each one of those creatures is contributing its difficulty, but the fact that those creatures can split up and each of them take on a PC, and the PCs will have to divide their attention between 5 different creatures, means all of those creatures are more powerful than any one of them would be alone, if you sort of follow that. It's sort of a non-linear progression of difficulty. This is something that 4th edition didn't take into consideration. Mainly because 4th edition built on the assumption that you were going to always face 5 monsters, or an equal number of monsters as PCs. So they balanced the output to that. Here, in 5th edition, they've decided that they want combat encounters to scale. They want it to be possible to face just one monster. They want it to be possible to face many monsters, and they want the math to really work at all levels, which means they had to figure out this non-linear way of tracking the difficulty. It's really the only way to do it, okay? Because as we saw, solos and elite monsters in 4th edition, they had to be built in special ways to make them the equivalent of monsters. And even then, in this edition, there are some special things that are done for really powerful monsters, which, by the way, again, pick this up. It does some really cool things with the bigger, more powerful monsters. Check it out. But that's it. Okay. So what happens is when you have a number of monsters other than just one, there is this multiplier that you want to apply to each creature's XP. Okay, so for example, when you have 2 monsters, each monster is not worth its XP. It is worth 1.5 times its XP. So if you have a CR1 creature, which would normally be 200 XP, if you put 2 of them together, each one is contributing 300 XP worth of difficulty. Okay, and now you see why I'm saying worth of difficulty. Because what you have to remember is that doesn't change the actual XP award that the players are going to earn. They're still going to earn 200 XP for each of those creatures for a total of 400 XP if they kill them both. But difficulty-wise, that encounter is actually worth 600 XP, not 400. 2.5 or 1.5 times each creature's XP. Added together. So each creature is worth 300 XP instead of 200 of difficulty, and you add that together to get 600. If you have a group of monsters, which is defined as a group between 3 and 6 monsters, now you're multiplying by 2. So if I have 5 CR1 monsters, which are each worth 200 XP normally, I have to consider each of them to actually be worth 400 XP worth of difficulty in that encounter, because I'm doubling it, which means 5 of them is worth 2,000 XP. Okay, you can see that it shoots up pretty quickly. And when you add just one more to go from 5 to 6 monsters, you're actually adding 400 XP, not 200. So, which could be the equivalent of 4 first-level characters if you look at the encounter difficulty per character table. Okay? So you're going to want to look at the table and multiply it out. Okay. In addition, if the number of players in your party are different, if they're not 3 to 5 PCs, then you run into the same scaling problem where, see, like a pair of monsters versus 4 or 5 PCs still means that each of the PCs can kind of pair off against the monsters if they want to. But if you've got 2 monsters against 2 PCs, well, that's as difficult as 5 monsters against 5 PCs, because each PC has to stand on their own, has to be able to split up and take those monsters, divide their attention. Okay? So, when you have a really small party, you've got to treat the group multiplier as 1 factor bigger. Okay? And this is explained on page 58. And if you've got a large party of, 6 or 7 PCs, well, suddenly 6 or 7 PCs against 4 monsters, or 3 monsters, is really the equivalent of, 4 PCs against 2 monsters, if you really think about it. So again, you've got to treat the multiplier as 1 factor smaller. What does all of that mean? Well, I'll tell you honestly. And this is where we go into the editorial portion. Because, read this over so that you understand it. But here's what it really means. It means that it is very difficult to build into an encounter. Okay? It is not as simple as adding up XP to a budget. Because every factor that changes is going to change your budget. Most importantly, the number of creatures. So if I had, again, let's say I'm building with just a CR1 monster. It's worth 200 XP. So if I'm building with 1 CR1 monster, that's a 200 XP encounter. If I'm building with 2 of them, suddenly that's a 600 XP encounter because there's 2 of them and their XP is multiplied by a factor of 1.5. So now if I'm building a third, if I add a third monster there, now suddenly I've gone up from 600 to 1200. So I've doubled the experience worth of challenge just by adding 1 more monster. But now if I add 1 more monster, I'm going from 1200 to 1600. I'm not doubling it again because I crossed that threshold from one group multiplier to another. So it's really counterintuitive. Okay? And that means it's very hard to build to a budget. Obviously, the way this is meant to be used, and I'm guessing, I'm inferring based on the way it's written, what it's really meant to do is to let you gauge the difficulty of an encounter that you already have built. To say, all right, I'm gonna throw 3 goblins in this room. How hard is that going to be for my second level party of 4 PCs? Well, 3 goblins in a room, that's going to be 4, 8, 12. That's going to be 1,200. Oh, wait, no, goblins are... I'm just going to guess. Goblins are CR a half or CR a quarter. Now I'm actually looking it up. Or actually, you know what? I'm just going to open up to a random page and we're going to do it like that. I should have planned this better. Okay, so I'm going to throw 3 orcs in a room. How challenging is that for my group of 4 second-level PCs? Well... Number 1, we're going to figure out what 4 second-level PCs can handle. According to the table, they would consider an easy encounter to be 200 XP, a medium encounter to be 400 XP, a hard encounter is going to be, 150 times 4, so that's going to be 600 XP, and a deadly encounter is going to be anything up to 1,200 XP. Okay, so those are my thresholds. That's where, that's where the cutoffs are for easy, moderate, difficult, and deadly. Though, I'll be quite frank, if you go anywhere above difficult, the way 5e swings, you're probably going to be killing a PC. So now we got to look at the orcs. And what did I say? I'm throwing 3 orcs in the room? Well, each orc is a CR 1/2. So, level 2 PCs can handle a CR 1/2 creature no problem. So the CR threshold is not a problem. But now, so a CR 1/2 is worth 100 XP, but there are 3 of them. And once I throw 3 creatures in there, then I've got to multiply by a factor of 2. So those orcs are each actually bringing 200 experience points worth of difficulty to the encounter for a total of 600 XP worth of difficulty. Now, looking at my threshold, that's my cutoff for a hard encounter. Okay, so you've got 3 CR 1/2 creatures in a room against 4 second-level PCs is a hard encounter. That's kind of tough to intuit. You really had to just run out that math. And I would be questioning whether I really want to throw that encounter at the party, based on those numbers. I probably would, because, they can always run away, and if they don't run away, they deserve what happens. But just be aware of that, okay? But the other thing is that adding one more monster to that mix isn't as big a factor, so it's only adding 200 more XP, so it goes up to 800 XP. It doesn't quite cross that threshold of where the encounter is truly deadly. Wait, actually that's a lie, it does. Because anything from 600 to 1200 is deadly. Don't do that. So, but what if I was now to drop one orc off that encounter? Where would that fall? Well, now I've got to kind of run the math out again, because 2 monsters is worth 1.5. The multiplier for 2 creatures in a group is 1.5. So instead of being worth 100 XP, each of these orcs, because there's 2 of them, are going to be worth 150 XP for 300 XP, which puts it right between easy and medium for this particular party. So that's where you run into the other weirdness, is that there's big steps here, okay? If I have 2 orcs, it's not quite an average encounter. If I have 3 orcs, it's a hard encounter that borders on deadly, okay? And that's really weird to work with. And it's really weird to work with to build encounters coming in the other way. I mean, let's say obviously I have my party of 4 second-level PCs. And I know my cutoffs, 200, 400, 600, and 1200 are my encounter difficulty cutoffs. Now, I want to build an encounter, okay? What could I throw into that encounter? Well, obviously I could throw one creature that's worth about 400, so I could throw a CR2 creature in there. But what if I wanted to throw more than one creature in there? How can I eyeball that? Well, the fact is you really can't. You sort of have to start to sit and do the math and say, well, if I want to throw a pair of creatures, then each creature is going to be worth 1.5 times as much. So if I want 400 to be the total XP, then each creature is going to have to be worth 200 XP. So what am I looking at? 125? Yeah, about that. So each creature needs to be worth about 125 XP, which means I'm looking, probably I want 2 CR 1/2 creatures. Okay? Which we kind of knew already, didn't we? Because we were looking at 2 orcs. But whatever. Okay. We knew that one going in. But let's say I want to do sort of a mixed pair. Well, I could... See, that suddenly it gets really tricky now. I want to throw 2 monsters in there, and I'm going to pair them up. And like, what if I wanted to throw an orc and his wolf buddy? Well, let's see. An orc is a CR 1/2. It's worth 100. And let's say, oh, he has a dire wolf, which is a CR 1. That's worth 200. So that's going to be worth 300 because there's 2 monsters, and the orc is going to be worth 200 because there's 2 monsters. So that's 500. That's pushing between medium and hard. But you see what I'm saying? How it's tough to work into that from a budget? You kind of have to just try things and then see how the math works out. Now, that being said, I don't think, and I've never thought, that the math should be followed exactly. In fact, I've written whole articles on why you shouldn't try to follow the math exactly, and I'm working on another one right now that will hopefully be live sometime this week. But that being said, it's a tough system to work with, and it's tough for people to grasp. I'm seeing a lot of people already questioning it. Just the fact that I came out and said, hey, listen guys, remember, if you're eyeballing by CR, that really only works for a group of PCs against one monster. As soon as you change the number of monsters, there are a bunch of multipliers. And as soon as your PC is off spec, or as soon as your party is off spec, like it's only got 2 PCs in it, then things are different. Even if it's got 3 PCs or 5 PCs, the numbers change pretty drastically. This all came about because a Twitter friend of mine, GM Raffi on Twitter, he mentioned that he threw 5 kobolds against a party of 3 first-level PCs, thinking it would be okay. And when I actually went and did the math, let's do the math. Let's one more example here. Again, open up to your table. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that a kobold is a CR 1/4, which means that it is worth 50? Is it kobold? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and look up kobolds. This is exciting video here, right? I'm also having trouble with finding a K. Okay, so a kobold is CR 1/8, which means that it is worth 25 experience points. Okay. So now we have 3 level 1 PCs. So we've got to figure out our encounter thresholds, right? So we go to our table, the encounter difficulty by character, encounter difficulty XP per character. We see that 3 level 1 PCs would have an easy encounter with 75 XPs, would have a moderate encounter of 150 XPs. A hard encounter would be, 3 times 75 is going to be 150, 200, 225. And a deadly encounter would be 300 XP, up to 300 XP. So anything above 225 is probably going to kill the party. So now how do those 5 CR 1/8 creatures play out? Well, a group of 5 creatures, we have to multiply all their experience by 2 to figure out how difficult they are. So each kobold is worth 50 XP, and there are 5 of them. So that's 250 XP, and you can see that we are over the hard threshold and into the deadly category. We're between 225 and 300, which is a deadly encounter, which is potentially lethal for 1 or more player characters. So GM Raffi, if he had done the math, would have known that that was actually going to be a very dangerous encounter for 3 PCs. But the math is not really intuitive, and trying to eyeball it, or forgetting about those multipliers, because if you did that without the multiplier, you would say, okay, 25 XP per kobold, so that's 125. Oh, and that's just barely a moderate difficulty encounter for 3 first level PCs. That should be fine, right? Well, not really. So, in review, okay, your challenge rating is only going to help you assess the difficulty for 4 PCs of that level versus 1 monster of that CR. That is all. Any more than that, any changes or deviations from that, and the numbers are going to change, and they may change drastically, surprisingly drastically. Number 2, in order to build an encounter, you first want to look at page 57 of your DM's basic rules for the encounter difficulty XP per character table, and then multiply it out by the number of PCs you have, and that's going to tell you where your difficulty numbers lie. And you can keep that little chart for your party handy, because, it's going to last until they go up in level. But then, when you're figuring out how much each monster is worth, you have to multiply each monster's XP times a factor based on the number of monsters in that encounter. Okay? The next thing to remember is that you are not actually changing the XP that the party earns for defeating those monsters. The XP only changes for calculating the difficulty of the encounter. Okay? So once you've got all those three things down, you're ready to build encounters by the numbers. Good luck, and I don't know, run angry, I guess. If I turn this into a regular series of vlogs, I'm also going to figure out some sort of clever sign-off line. This has been the Angry DM. Yeah, I don't know how to end videos. How do I stop recording?